The final day of the DreamHack ZOWIE Open is live. Just about. Welcome to Yuan Shiping. We've got one more day of Counter-Strike. 3 best of 3s, 2 semis and a final, and we have got our stacked 4. It may not have been the easiest road for all of them, but we have got ourselves the 4 teams locked in into those semi-final spots. We get to see NIP again. Astralis looking to go ahead and set themselves up for success ahead of the major. Alongside that, you've got yourself Godsent, already very exciting from Malmö, and then you throw in all on top of that Immortals, a team that didn't make the major, and now they've got a chance for, I'm going to describe it as redemption, but I think it's a long way from that if they do actually pick up the win here. They said they won the trophy, and well, they're a step closer despite it being a little bit too close of an affair. If you are joining us now and you didn't quite catch up, fortunately, you're catching the pre-show. We're going to be talking all about what we did witness over the past 2 days of Counter-Strike. I say we. I've got myself, Halvor Vendetta Gulestol and Robin Viflaren Johansson joining me. Great to have you gents with me once again. How did you sleep? You feeling fresh today?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. 6 hours is all I need, right?
6? Okay,
yeah.
That's not too bad. I think 8, is 8 the one that like makes us like human beings again, I think?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Haven't experienced it in quite a while, but you know.
And Robin, you're looking good in the double black combo today.
I'm good. I feel good today.
You do?
Yeah.
You're looking forward to some video
Can't
games?
complain. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, like, let's kind of let's turn the clocks back and recap what we have witnessed over these past 2 days. We started day 1 with a couple of surprises. I mean, yes, our first 2 matches was just kind of NIP walk in the park, and we lost ENTS very early on. But even then, even these stomps that we did witness, we'll start with Group A and just kind of get our heads around what we did witness. Not only did ENTS kind of struggle to make too much happen in their first game, but they were the first team that did get eliminated in this tournament. But look at that, just underneath it, SK versus Immortals. I think that's going to be one of our main touching topics as we do start off this discussion, just seeing how SK managed to, well, I think find success so early on in this tournament and with such limited resources. Halvor?
Yeah, no, it's just very, very impressive how well SK came out of this, because going into it, you'd expect they'd pretty much be the punching bag at the tournament. Having 2 stand-ins, not really having any time to prepare at all, but instead we ended up actually seeing an SK that looked more organized and actually playing off each other better than the actual lineup did for the last couple of months. So very good showing from SK, absolutely, and so they could be really happy with what they did. Even though they ended up going out to Immortals, they still had a really good showing.
And you know, what do you think about the whole Pimp pickup? Like just kind of losing Pimp and sending him off to North America. Do you think he's going to be a strength in the North American roster? I
mean, who knows what's going to happen to that Liquid team? I'm not really sure, you know, what the eventual lineup is going to look like when it's all said and done. Well, it's going to be JDM and Pimp, but
yeah,
you know, before they actually play a game, it's going to be really hard to tell how it's going to work. We know that they've had their fair share of issues when it comes to just getting a stable lineup in place and actually being able to sit down and practice with it. But hopefully, you know, that'll be the missing piece for an NA team, but still remains to see.
Because it's interesting that we keep saying, I know we are getting a bit sidetracked, but we do have plenty of time, don't worry about it. It's kind of interesting that we're seeing this turn up more and more, you know, just exporting European talent to North America. But it's not like a kind of instant fix, is it? Like just sending Pimp over there isn't going to suddenly revolutionize Liquid's gameplay.
No, I mean, not at all. You can take a good example for CLG with PETA, for example, bringing in a European coach. It does not solve all the issues, right? He can only do so much, and I think it's going to be the same thing for Pimp. Coming in there, you have the European mentality, how Europeans like to play, and I mean, Liquid, this current lineup that we'll have after the major is strong. It's going to probably be one of the better North American teams. I'm not sure how they're going to utilize Pimp, since they have Peacemaker now as well as their coach. But it's going to be fun to see how that transition goes in, because you have all these talented players, and Pimp has never really been known to be the mad fragger, right? He's extremely passionate in what he does, and he's a smart player, and I think it's going to be. I don't think Liquid needed one more mad fragger. I think they needed a smart player. I think they needed someone that knows the scene really well, and I think Pimp fits that extremely well. And you know, returning to discussion, it doesn't seem like SK have had to pay too heavy of a price in his absence.
No, I mean, found 2 new prospects.
Baldi, right?
Yeah. Glaive obviously being a bit more well-known with his past in Western Wolves and in Nexus and so on, but Valda just coming out of the blue and showing up in a big way. He had a great tournament, you know, barring that last best of 3 where he had, even when he didn't, you know, mass up a crazy amount of frags, he still had impact in terms of winning clutch rounds several times. So, you know, that was a massive pickup for them, or I guess a massive stand-in session for him, and he got to, you know, showcase his skills. And I guess it's, you know, it's true what Madi and Freeze was talking about. He's, you know, one of those 3 top talents within Denmark, together with Config and Kjerby.
Yeah, and this is also, a bit of a running theme throughout the entire tournament, Robin. We've been talking about young, new, exciting players throughout our time here in Jönköping. It'd be rude not to mention Epsilon and what happened over in Group B.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, for sure. I was saying yesterday after that game versus NIP, they were outperforming NIP. NIP had the experience, but Epsilon, they really, individually, they were a lot better than NIP were looking yesterday. So, and they could have run away with it. It could have been 2-0 for Epsilon. You saw there, when they were ahead both of these maps, the inexperience kicks in, right? And that's when you see on all these like unorthodox pushes everywhere. You're not going in together. So I think if they manage to get to fix that, they are looking very promising.
I mean, scorelines like 16-13, 16-14 versus the Ninjas. You can't help but think that there's more to be seen from this Epsilon roster. Now, if I'm a layman, which I probably count as, but if I'm sitting at home and I want to kind of understand this, that Epsilon can just turn up a team that they probably aren't too familiar with. You don't see them all the time on the streams. You don't see them versus the T1 teams often. And then they deliver a 16-13, 16-14 best of 3 performance versus the Ninjas in Pajamas, who've won DreamHack Masters Malmo, major champions. Does this it's really hard to explain how to gauge Epsilon after that. Like one victory, one game like that of that caliber versus NIP. What do we learn from Epsilon? Is this a up and coming T2 roster?
Well, I mean, obviously you get a sense for how good they are individually, okay. Which is something you haven't seen previously. But similar to what we thought about Immortals when they came on the scene, is the fact that we don't immediately take into consideration the fact that first off, when NIP go into this matchup, it's almost impossible for them to not think of this as a easy match. Because what kind of info do you actually have to grab on Epsilon and the players, really? They haven't played all that much. They haven't played together for that long of a time. So, you don't really prepare for a team like Epsilon if you're NIP. So obviously that's going to make the matchup just a tiny bit easier for Epsilon. Obviously it's still a gigantic task, but every little bit helps. And that's kind of a similar thing we saw with a lot of new teams that emerge on the scene. Question is whether or not when they show up for their next tournament, if they're going to have the same kind of performance, because that's when people are actually going to, start looking at what they're doing.
Right. Okay. So are you suggesting a very similar story to Immortals or X-Tempo Storm than you could apply to perhaps Epsilon? Do you think they might be fulfilling that category now?
Well, I think pretty much every team goes through that. It doesn't matter where you eventually end up, but everybody has that little bit of a halt when teams all of a sudden start taking you seriously. And that's when you kind of get that truth test whether or not you're going to be like one of the contenders in the future, or if you're going to have to mix and match things up.
I can see you nodding, Robin.
No, I mean, and keep in mind as well that we are talking about like Epsilon played great versus NIP, which is again we were discussing this day one with the domestic matchups and a very weak Hellraisers. But if you compare it now, let's say that they ended up in Group A, for example. I think that what we saw yesterday, I don't think we would have seen that versus another decent team that is from another country. I think that their playstyle fit very well with how NIP likes to play, and the individual play comes into effect there. But put them into versus, for example, Astralis, I don't think that it would have been that close.
And they also even said it in the video we showed yesterday before the game. The fact that they are playing versus NIP just kind of sends them into overdrive, and that seems to be just a Swedish thing. Whenever they get the chance to fight the top dog, really, together with Fnatic, that just kind of triggers something inside of you. And you probably don't get that feeling if you're playing someone from Astralis. Sure, same caliber type of team, but they're not your countrymen.
They're not NIP.
They're not NIP, and NIP, legend status, and you can tell just by the crowd every time NIP shows up. You can see what kind of following they have. So. Being David in that kind of a fight does bring, the fight of the dog in you.
And we've hung up on all the kind of positives I think we've drawn from the past 2 days. Let's hang up on some of the negatives as well. What was your main critique of which team did you have the most criticism for over the past 2 days?
I mean, for me, okay, so coming into the tournament, I already had my top 4 just basing off of Group A and Group B.
Sure.
I think that we had. The ones that we have here. Okay. I just think that they were a little bit skewed because NIP lost that game versus Godsend. I thought that we were going to have NIP versus Godsend in one semi and Astralis Mortals on the other. Wait, does that work?
The other way.
No, sorry.
Astralis Godsend.
Astralis Godsend and Immortals NIP. But instead, they got a little bit mixed up, so we have NIP Astralis and Godsend Immortals, obviously. But I think that the top 4 that we have are the ones that I was looking into to begin with. SK with 2 stand-ins. ENCE hasn't really been looking that great. You had the Epsilon and also Hellraisers, but both of these teams, Epsilon, to be fair, I really haven't heard of them that much before. We saw, and also Hellraisers had
lackluster. Maybe
yeah,
qualifier.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like they have a new roster. It's been around for a little bit. They have their star players, which is an Oscar, but they really haven't been performing.
Did you see the message he put out on social media? Like something about keep your eyes out, big announcements being made soon. We really it sucks to have not made the major.
Don't you just love ambiguous
super
tweets like that?
cryptic post?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I don't know if you can't put all the blame on Oscar, obviously. I think that whole team needs to just really go back and take a step back and just rework of how they want to play the game. Because obviously, if you do have this so-called star player in Oscar, and he's not being utilized correctly, then something is extremely wrong, right? And I think that they showcased that this tournament and even during the major qualifier.
Now, do you think, you know how you're talking about domestic rivalry, just quickly returning to that, because we're about to start talking about our next, to our coming games coming up, our 2 semi-finals. But do you think Godsend and Epsilon would have been an equally as close affair?
No.
And why is that? Just because we're talking about domestic rivalries and you're suggesting, okay, well, Sweden v Sweden, it's going to be closer than normal. But
the thing is, why
the exception?
If you put the same thing as if you were to ask me, would you think that Fnatic would have a harder time versus NIP or versus Epsilon than like NIP did, I would have said no as well.
Okay.
And I think that NIP and Fnatic is always going to be a good matchup. Doesn't matter if NIP were in a slump, they would always play really close versus Fnatic, even though Fnatic always ended up winning.
Sure.
I think that Fnatic, in terms of their individual players, are a lot better than if you just go head-to-head with all these players in Epsilon. I think that just Fnatic overpowered them. Whereas for NIP, with the additional threat now, they're a little bit smarter in what they do, right? It doesn't really always work out. So just head-to-head, I feel like Fnatic are the more skilled pack of the bunch of all of the Swedish teams, whereas NIP probably plays a little bit more strategic. And then you have obviously Godsend, which is, I would say it's a little bit of a mix of both. You have the genius in Pronax, but then you also have all these young talent that within that team that can just show up any day of time.
And it does seem like Godsend really has gelled, and that will be our next port of call. We are going to be discussing these games coming up. I'm pretty sure we're taking a quick break to catch our breath before we talk about the semi-finals. No, we're not. No, we're not. Godsend then versus Immortals is our first game, and so we're going to be talking a little bit as to how we feel that one's going to be playing out. I want to try and understand, just how close this could be. I'm trying to grasp exactly how capable Immortals are, because so far it has not been particularly awe-inspiring from these guys. Yes, they've made the semi-final, but I still feel like we're all leaning towards the Swedes in this one.
Yeah, I kind of am. And when you were talking about disappointing teams, I think Hellraisers was a very easy pick, but for me, Immortals as well, even though they somehow made it to the semifinals. But I think if Immortals had run into the Epsilon we saw yesterday versus NIP, obviously very different matchup, as you mentioned, Epsilon would have been in the semifinals, not Immortals. That said, Immortals did get gradually better. Their best of 3 versus SK was a much better showing than what we saw on day 1. So you definitely have to take that into account. And they definitely straightened out a lot of their issues that they had. You can see that when they were playing Train yesterday versus SK, they stopped doing that, or Phelps specifically stopped doing, the single pushes into Ivy. This time he actually got bolts with him a couple of times. Even though it didn't necessarily pan out, at least they addressed the issues that they had. And that's, something good to go off of. Well,
we'll be talking about that more. I can actually see both coaches hanging out on stage with Sue. So it'd be great to go ahead and hear from RDL and Zach as they are standing by with Sue for a pre-match.
That is correct. I am joined with the 2 coaches for our teams for our first semifinal match of the day. Zach, first I'll speak with you. Yesterday when I spoke to you, you mentioned that Godsend was a team that you respected very, very much, that you thought that they were a very skilled team. However, if the Immortals want a chance of becoming champions here at DreamHack Summer, you must defeat them. So what do you have to say to RDL before this match?
You're definitely on a rise. You're having a really good tournament. You beat NIP, but this is going to be an experience for us, so take it easy, please. Okay.
So Zach says take it easy, but I have a feeling that is not the plan that you guys have in store for the Immortals. RDL, obviously everyone knows you guys burst onto the scene with an amazing top 4 finish at Malmö, but unfortunately the road stopped there. But here, you have a chance to reach the grand finals for the very first time. You just heard Zach say take it easy, but what do you have to say back to him?
We were pretty pissed off at our performances after Malmö, so now this is a redemption for us, and we're at home soil, so we want to give the Swedish fans Swedish semifinals.
All right, so will it be the Swedish semifinals or not? Please shake hands. You may return to your booth. It is time to find out. Will it be the Immortals or will it be Godsend moving on to the finals? Alex, back to you.
Thanks very much. so we can get a real taste of the hunger from both of these coaches. You can tell that there's a lot of passion behind these players.
I felt there was a surprising amount of fear in Zach's voice. Like starting off like, so how do you feel about your chances? Please go easy on us.
I think that's an extremely bad way to go into a game. You're sure he's not actually playing; he's just being their coach, so that's good. But if all the other teams feel the same way,
or he's making calls like, guys, I think we should maybe go A.
Yeah.
Okay, so Zach's maybe not the most confident. The veto certainly may help him grow his confidence as it is up on screen. Now, we always, hail Immortals for having quite a deep map pool very early on. Godsent, they're a newer roster. They have Pronax at the helm. Is it safe to assume they've got a pretty damn good map pool too?
I mean, well, it's, it wouldn't seem like it because of how they played online, but from what we've seen so far, it seems pretty decent. Well, they don't play Dust 2, so that's going to be really easy ban for them. They still have a bit of a tricky matchup. There's still a lot of maps that Immortals can or bring out that's going to be, well, could potentially be very difficult for Godsent to actually handle.
I mean, keep in mind here as well, we were talking about Godsent. Actually, Immortals ends up picking Cash. I think that's a good pick, but keep in mind, for Godsent here, we were talking about this yesterday as well when it comes to domestic matchups, and if you compare Godsent's performances versus non-domestic teams, it hasn't been that flattering. So that's something that Immortals should really consider here. Yeah, sure, they had a good run yesterday and the day before, but yeah, they beat NIP. It's domestic, but look at they didn't even make it to the major qualifier. They lost in the minor. After Malmö, yeah, again they ended up losing to NIP, but in the groups, and I can't remember which tournament they attended right before Malmö, where it was a disaster as well. So sure, these guys, they have good players, they can perform, but they really haven't performed versus a non-domestic team to the point where, oh yeah, these guys, they can beat NIP, yeah, but okay, well, can you beat Astralis? Can you beat Navi? Can you beat Luminosity? So I think Immortals here is going to be a really good test for them.
Okay, so it's like it's a very important step into growth for Godsent, is you're suggesting that, okay, you can beat the Swedes, you can do it very, very well and convincingly, or you can at least keep it close, but they haven't got any results to show that they can do the T1 teams outside of their region. So it should be good actually to see how far Immortals can push them. I do want to also raise the issue that Godsent as a roster have got a lot of names that people wouldn't be too familiar with. We've been telling the story, we got really hyped about Valdi, we got really hyped to see these newer faces on stage, the entirety of Epsilon. The same can kind of be said for Godsent. Yes, we've seen one big tournament, but there are still some unfamiliar names there, Halvor.
Well, I mean, you could definitely go that route because, well, even though Schneider has been in teams like Fnatic, Dignitas, and everything, he had a pretty extended break from playing at a competitive level. So for anyone who's fairly new to the scene, might not know his backstory, the fact that he actually played with, JW and Flush and the likes. So definitely,
slightly
a re-emergence, I guess, to the spotlight for a lot of these players. Twist are, always been a highly regarded player within Sweden. Always kind of turned down the opportunity to take that step ladder onto the next level, because he wanted to prove himself. He wanted to do it on his own terms with his own guys. I guess with this Godsent team, that's a pretty good start to it. Yeah. Lekro, which is probably the most unknown out of all of them.
I mean, that's who I had in my mind when I was
exactly. Like him and Pauf, those two guys are obviously they've been well known within the Swedish scene, but for everyone on the outside, they obviously don't get that kind of an insight to what goes on a daily basis. But Lekro coming through after playing for Public Clear, started playing FPL, started doming heads, actually getting the attention of Twist to the point where Twist is like, well, would you like to play with us?
Hey, you're kind of good at video games, and we
kind of want to play with you.
Awesome. I love that story. There's a lot more to talk about with Godsent, but before we do that, let's have a quick look at their road to this semi-final, their road to this place right here.
Yeah, I have no doubt we are going to enjoy this.
This is always a lights-out game. You just know it's going to deliver.
So the feeling going into this tournament was pretty terrible, and it's a big surprise to be first in group, so.
I'm a 1 versus 3, it exists, has to clutch this up, can't do it, power holds the angle.
I was quite surprised that the team meshed together as well as we did.
Because we bootcamped for like 7 days now.
Coming into this event, the bootcamp hasn't been what we would like.
We've been terrible. I've never been on a team that played so shitty.
But it's always like that, and when we perform on LAN, it's like it's a whole different story.
Did what he could there, but with no grenade and an auto sniper in hand, it's a nightmare retake situation. He gets the first kill, but it's not enough.
I just think we need to believe in ourselves and strive towards the same goal, and always know that even if it sucks to prac, or if it sucks to play a deathmatch, or you just need to focus on what is most important, and that is to be the best that you can be for the fans, for the team, and always just strive to be at the top. And yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that in the end of 2016 we will be a top 10 team.
If all things like mash together as well as it does right now, I can play here forever. That's how I feel right now.
This Swedish 5 is aiming for the top. Godsend, Powerf, Lekro, Pronax, Snyder, and Twist. And so many kind of interesting sentences coming out of the mouths there of the Swedes in that video. One that hangs out to me is Schneider saying, if things go like this forever, I could play forever. I like that from him, Halvor.
Yeah, and just from talking to a lot of the guys, off camera and backstage and everything, they really actually like playing together. Pronax says, Pronax is not normally a very sad guy. He's normally very cheerful and happy, but it kind of lights up a little bit extra when you talk about the team and like how much he's actually enjoying playing with these 4 people. So that's a great sign. Obviously, that means you can deal with downturns in your progress a lot better. So if things go wrong, it's not the end of the world. You can shake it off and get back to work. And I think that's the really big thing about this team, that they're not going to get too down on themselves. Even if they, let's say, end their tournament life here, that's not going to be the end of Godsend. They're just going to go back home, continue to work, and then show up for the next event.
Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be a real intriguing few months. They say they want to get to top 10. They say that they're capable by the end of 2016. We want to be top 10. That's what RDL's been chatting. And actually, you know what? This would be a big step in the right direction, taking this semi-final and getting themselves into the grand final of the DreamHack ZOWIE Open. 100,000 on the line, and we haven't introduced their opponents yet. Immortals are waiting in the wings, and we're going to go ahead and have a quick look at how they got to this semi-final.
They play good when they are hyped. When they are quiet and don't cheer for every round and don't scream, don't shout, they play bad. When they start to get involved in the game, they start to do amazing things, unbelievable things. And so I think they must put their heart on their mice.
Eu acho que a gente entrou muito desligado, não tava na hype. E quando a gente começou a embalar quando a gente começa perdendo, a gente se perde, sempre aconteceu isso, sabe? Mas quando a gente começa ganhando, como foi na Overpass, embala, a gente se torna outro time.
Interesting double kill, make it 3 for Lucas, what a play! It looked like they were completely shut down in that situation. Took the first frag around and Showtime chiming in as well.
Eu acho que a gente tem que jogar com muita calma, porque pelo que eu conheço do God City, eles são muito bons de miras. Jogar mais em times, né? Que nem a gente começou a jogar hoje contra esse cara. Acho que jogando mais em time a gente consegue bater de frente com eles na mira, que a gente tem. A gente precisa ser superior só em conjunto.
They are very young, so they have a lot of years to improve themselves. But I think in end of this year, they're probably gonna be top 5 of the world. I'm sure we have a chance to win the tournament. I'm a rock star, just me and my guitar. I'm straight on the rocks, I was born many ways.
Well, they said top 10, Godsend did, and Immortals, they looks like they're aiming even higher. Top 5 by the end of the year. That raised some eyebrows here on the desk. We'll talk about that in a moment. Phelps, Henny, Bolt, Showtime, and Lucas. They play with fire. Robin, I'll let you talk us through this roster.
No, I mean, I think the 3 go-to guys that we've been discussing this whole week is Henny, Phelps, and Bolster in game leader. And these are the guys to look out for as well. Yeah, sure, you have Showtime and Lucas as well, but these are a little bit more on the in the back. You have Phelps, which is, they're star players. It was supposed to be Henny, but Phelps is the one guy that has been stepping up when Henny has not been performing. We kept on discussing this throughout the weekend, where you have 2 star players within a team. These 2 players should be the Immortal star players. And then Bolt is obviously their in-game leader. After Peacemaker left, Boss is the guy in the rain, and he's the guy making all the decisions within the team. So yeah, it's quite fun to watch them play because they do have that little Luminosity vibe in them. Obviously, they're both from Brazil. They live right next to the Luminosity house, and I believe that Fallen is helping them out quite a bit. So whenever you see Luminosity play, you tend to go back and when you watch Immortals,
see similarities.
Yeah, you see a lot of similarities. You have Henny. If you compare him with Fallen, obviously Fallen is a lot more experienced in that regard, but Henny is the kind of flashy opera that they look into. You can take him, for example, as a Michael Lila, a European Michael Lila, for example, very flashy player. And then just Phelps, I mean, we saw him throughout this weekend here. He's just been on fire, and he's the guy that's winning this team games.
Yeah, we'll be talking more about maturity, age, and everything else that comes into it in the post-match. But it is time to get into this one, gents. And we won't be coming back map by map, and so you have to give me a prediction for the entire series. I know this might not be a bit as easy. These guys have not played before. You have no results to go on. And I'm going to start with you, Halvor. What are you thinking? What's your heart telling you?
I believe in, well, no, I'm going with my head.
Good.
And I believe in the Swedes. I think the map pool is, in general, just more favorable for them. I think their Mirage pick is pretty good. We saw how many struggles Immortals had actually closing out ends on that map. And if it goes to a third map, I think Trine is also a very good choice for them. Even though we had an improved Immortals versus SK yesterday, don't think it's going to be enough to stand up to Godsend. So I think it's going to be either a 2-0 or 2-1 for Godsend.
And
yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy win for Godsend here by any means. I think that Immortals were extremely lucky that Godsend beat NIP, otherwise they would have had a much more difficult series. But I think Godsend is just the right team for Immortals here, and I still have Godsend to win, but I do believe it's going to go to 3 maps, and I think that's going to be close.
All right, okay. So you guys are thinking, you know the score. You know it's going to get nice and close. And actually, if you guys want to know the score as well, do be sure to check out this application. It's on your smartphone, iOS, and Google Play Store. You can grab it, and it basically helps you follow CS and all the other games as well. Dota, League of Legends, they're all present if you're a multi-gamer. So do be sure to check it out, and it'll keep you up to date with all of the latest CSGO gossip and news. Right, now, your casters are ready, and so is this semi-final. The DreamHack ZOWIE Open Day 3 starts right here, right now. Immortals versus Godsend. They've never played before. There's a lot of unknowns coming into this one, and let's see how the Swedes do on home soil.